I was shoveling snow off my driveway at 6 in the morning when Brenda Thompson from the HOA marched across the street with a clipboard clutched to her chest like a shield. The blizzard warning had been in effect for 3 days, and the temperature hadn't climbed above 15 degrees since Monday. My heated walkway system, the one I'd installed last October, was the only thing keeping my elderly neighbor Mrs. Patterson from breaking her hip every time she needed to check her mail. "Kyle Richardson," Brenda called out, her voice cutting through the howling wind. "We need to talk about your flagrant violation of community standards." I leaned on my shovel and watched her navigate the icy sidewalk. She was wearing designer boots that looked expensive but provided absolutely zero traction. She nearly went down twice before reaching my property line. "Morning, Brenda. What violation are you talking about?" She held up the clipboard with gloved hands, pointing to a highlighted section. "Your heated walkway system. It's not in compliance with the architectural guidelines established in 2019. You need to shut it down immediately." "You're kidding." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. "It's negative 12 degrees with the wind chill. The National Weather Service issued a blizzard warning. People could get seriously hurt on these sidewalks. The guidelines clearly state that any exterior heating system requires HOA approval, which you failed to obtain." Brenda's lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm issuing you a formal violation notice. You have 24 hours to comply, or we'll begin fining you $500 per day." "I submitted the application 7 months ago. Your committee never responded." "That's because it was denied." "I never received a denial letter." Brenda shifted her weight, nearly losing her balance again on the ice. "That's not my problem. The rules are the rules. Shut it down by tomorrow morning, or face the fines." She turned and carefully made her way back across the street to her pristine colonial house, the one with the perfect landscaping and the flagpole that probably violated 6 different county ordinances, but somehow never faced HOA scrutiny. I watched her go, feeling the cold seep through my winter coat. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Mrs. Patterson next door. "Did I just see Brenda giving you trouble?" I texted back. "Nothing I can't handle, stay warm." But I couldn't handle it, not really. The HOA in Meadowbrook Estates, Colorado, had become increasingly aggressive over the past 2 years, ever since Brenda took over as president. She'd transformed a reasonable community organization into something that resembled a small dictatorship. Last month, she'd fined the Hendersons $3,000 because their Christmas lights were the wrong shade of white. The month before that, she'd threatened legal action against Tom Morrison for parking his work truck in his own driveway. I went inside and made coffee, trying to think through my options. The heated walkway had cost me $12,000 to install. It ran on electricity and kept my front walk, driveway, and the public sidewalk in front of my house clear of ice and snow. It was environmentally friendly, energy efficient, and most importantly, it kept people safe. My phone rang. It was my lawyer, Derek Chen. "Kyle, I just got a very interesting email from the Meadowbrook Estates HOA," he said. "They're threatening to place a lien on your property if you don't comply with some violation notice." That was fast. She just left my house 10 minutes ago. "What's this about a heated walkway?" I explained the situation while Derek listened, occasionally making notes. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "Here's the thing," he finally said. "They might have a technical argument about the approval process, but forcing you to shut down a safety feature during a blizzard warning is completely unreasonable. More than that, it could open them up to liability if someone gets hurt. Can we fight this? We can, but HOA disputes are tricky. They're governed by both state law and the community's covenants, conditions, and restrictions. The CC and Articus usually give the HOA broad authority. However, Colorado law does provide some protections for homeowners, especially regarding safety issues. So, what do? Don't shut it down. Let them fine you. We'll fight the fines in court and make the argument that they're acting unreasonably and potentially creating a public safety hazard. In the meantime, I'll send them a formal response outlining our position. I thanked Derek and hung up, but I felt uneasy. Fighting the HOA meant months of legal battles, thousands in legal fees, and the constant stress of living under Brenda's increasingly hostile oversight. That evening, I went down to my basement to check on the heated walkway system's control panel. That's when I noticed something I'd completely forgotten about. Behind the water heater, there was an old access panel that led to a small utility room. The previous owner had mentioned it once, saying it connected to the community well system that had been installed when the neighborhood was first developed in the 1970s. I pulled open the access panel and squeezed through. The utility room was cramped and dusty, filled with old PVC pipes and valves. In the corner, there was a junction box where several large pipes converged. A faded label read, Meadowbrook Community Well Primary Distribution Junction. I'd always assumed the neighborhood was on city water. My water bill came from Aurora Municipal Water Department every month. But looking at this setup, I realized that the community well was probably still active, feeding into the municipal system or supplementing it somehow. I took out my phone and started researching. After an hour of digging through county records and old property documents, I discovered something remarkable. The Meadowbrook Community Well was a private well that served 32 homes in the neighborhood, including mine. It had been established in 1974, before the area was annexed into Aurora city limits. When the city water lines were extended into the neighborhood in 1982, the developers had created a hybrid system where the community well fed into a storage tank that supplemented the city water supply. The well was owned and operated by the Meadowbrook Estates, HOA, and according to the county records, it had never been properly permitted or inspected by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. I sat back on my heels, staring at those pipes. An unpermitted well serving 32 homes with drinking water was a serious violation of state law. The kind of violation that could result in massive fines, mandatory shutdowns, and even criminal charges if contamination was discovered. My phone buzzed with another email from the HOA. This one detailed the fine structure: $500 per day for the first week, increasing to $1,000 per day after that. They'd also scheduled a hearing for next Friday where they would vote on whether to place a lien on my property. I took photos of the well junction, the pipes, the labels, and every serial number I could find. Then I went upstairs and spent the next 3 hours compiling every piece of documentation I could find about the community well system. The next morning, Brenda was at my door again at 7 sharp. This time she had 2 other HOA board members with her, Patricia Woods, the treasurer, and Gary Sullivan, the secretary. All 3 of them looked cold and annoyed. "Mr. Richardson, we've conducted a visual inspection of your property," Brenda announced. "Your heated walkway system is still operational. You are now in violation of the compliance deadline. Fines will begin accruing as of midnight tonight." "I'm not shutting it down," I said calmly. "It's a safety feature during a blizzard warning. If someone slips and gets hurt on the ice, the HOA could be held liable." "That's not how this works," Patricia interjected. She was a thin woman in her 50s with sharp features and an even sharper tone. "The community guidelines supersede individual concerns. If everyone just did whatever they wanted, we'd have chaos." Heated walkways aren't chaos. They're common sense. Gary, who was a large man with a red face and perpetual scowl, stepped forward. You think you're special, don't you? Think the rules don't apply to you? Well, we're going to make an example out of you, Richardson. By the time we're done, you'll wish you just followed the simple instructions. Is that a threat? It's a promise, Brenda said. Enjoy your fines. They turned and left, nearly slipping on the icy sidewalk in front of the Johnson house next door. I watched them go, then pulled out my phone and called Derek again. They're proceeding with the fines, I told him, and they're getting aggressive about it. Let them. In the meantime, I want you to document everything. Every interaction, every email, every letter. We're going to need it. Derek, I found something else, something big. I told him about the community well system. He listened intently, asking several technical questions about the setup and what documentation I'd found. Kyle, if what you're saying is true, this is a major violation. Private wells serving multiple homes require extensive permitting, regular water quality testing, and inspections by the state health department. If they're operating an unpermitted well, they could be looking at fines of up to $25,000 per day, plus mandatory shutdown orders. What should I do with this information? Nothing yet. Let me do some research on the regulatory requirements, but this could give us significant leverage in negotiating a resolution to your walkway issue. I spent the rest of the day doing my regular work. I was a software consultant, which meant I could work from home most days. It was a good thing, too, because the blizzard had intensified and the roads were nearly impassable. The news was reporting that 2 people had already died from exposure when their car slid off the highway into a ditch. Around 3 in the afternoon, I heard a knock on my door. It was Mrs. Patterson, bundled up in about 6 layers of clothing. Kyle, I wanted to thank you for keeping the sidewalk clear, she said, her voice muffled by her scarf. I heard Brenda is giving you trouble about it. Don't worry about it, Mrs. Patterson. I'm handling it. She's a menace, that woman. Ever since her husband left her last year, she's been taking it out on everyone in the neighborhood. She fined me $200 last month because my mailbox was half an inch too far from the curb. Half an inch. I measured it 3 times. I didn't know that. Oh, she's done worse to others. The Kramers down on Willow Street. She forced them to tear out their entire vegetable garden because it violated some obscure landscaping rule. Cost them thousands of dollars and months of work. They're thinking of selling and moving. After Mrs. Patterson left, I started thinking about all the other homeowners who'd been bullied by Brenda and her HOA board. There had to be dozens of stories like mine, dozens of petty violations and excessive fines. The HOA was supposed to maintain property values and community standards, not terrorize residents. That evening, Derek sent me a detailed email outlining the regulatory requirements for private community wells in Colorado. The list was extensive. Permits from the state engineer's office, regular water quality testing for bacteria and contaminants, annual inspections, proper wellhead protection, certified operators, emergency response plans, and public notification requirements. According to Derek's research, the Meadowbrook community well had none of these things. It was completely off the books, operating in a legal gray area that had somehow escaped notice for decades. This is your nuclear option, Derek wrote in his email. If you report this to the state, they'll shut down the well immediately and potentially charge the HOA board with operating an illegal water system. But understand, this affects your neighbors too. 32 homes would lose their water supply until the issues are resolved, which could take months. I sat with that information for a long time, staring at my computer screen. Using the well as leverage felt wrong, like I'd be punishing my neighbors for Brenda's actions. But at the same time, people had a right to know that their drinking water was coming from an unpermitted, uninspected well that could be contaminated with who knows what. The next morning, I received a certified letter from the HOA's attorney. It was a formal demand letter, requiring me to shut down the heated walkway within 48 hours or face immediate legal action, including a lawsuit for injunctive relief and a lien on my property. I called Derek immediately. "They're escalating fast," he said after I read him the letter. "This is more aggressive than I expected. Usually, HOAs try to work things out before involving attorneys. What do you think I should do? Honestly, I think it's time to play your card. Contact the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment and report the unpermitted well. File a formal complaint. Once that's in motion, the HOA is going to have much bigger problems than your heated walkway. But what about my neighbors? They'll lose water. The state will work with the HOA to bring the system into compliance or connect everyone to city water. It might be disruptive, but it's also the right thing to do. People deserve to know their water is safe." I thought about Mrs. Patterson, about the Kramers and their destroyed garden, about all the other homeowners living under Brenda's increasingly tyrannical rule. Maybe this was the push the neighborhood needed. That afternoon, I filed a formal complaint with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, Water Quality Control Division. I included all the documentation I'd gathered. Photos of the well junction, county property records showing the well's existence, historical documents about its installation, and evidence that it had never been properly permitted or inspected. The response was faster than I expected. Within 2 hours, I received a call from an inspector named Jennifer Garcia. "Mr. Richardson, I've reviewed your complaint," she said. "This is a serious matter. If there's an unpermitted well serving multiple homes, we need to investigate immediately. Can you provide access to the well junction you described?" "Yes, it's in my basement. When do you want to come?" "Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. I'll bring our senior engineer as well. In the meantime, don't mention this to anyone, especially the HOA. We need to conduct our inspection before they have a chance to hide any evidence or destroy documentation." I agreed and hung up, feeling a mixture of relief and anxiety. I just set something in motion that couldn't be stopped. That evening, Brenda sent out a mass email to the entire neighborhood. The subject line read, "Reckless homeowner endangering community standards." In the email, she outlined my refusal to comply with established guidelines and warned that such behavior would not be tolerated. She encouraged neighbors to report any other violations they noticed, offering a $25 gift card to the local coffee shop for each valid report. My phone started buzzing with texts from neighbors. Most were supportive, saying Brenda had gone too far and that the heated walkway was obviously a good thing during a blizzard. A few were critical, echoing Brenda's argument about rules and standards. One person, someone named Marcus who lived 3 streets over, sent a long text about how my defiance would lead to property values declining and the neighborhood turning into a slum. I didn't respond to any of them. I just waited for morning. Inspector Garcia arrived exactly at 9, accompanied by a serious-looking man in his 60s who introduced himself as Paul Henderson, the senior water systems engineer for the region. They spent 20 minutes examining the well junction in my basement, taking photos and notes. "This is worse than I thought," Paul said, running his hand along one of the pipes. "This is a Class 2 public water system under Colorado law, which means it requires extensive permitting and oversight. I don't see any backflow prevention, No water quality monitoring equipment, no proper valving for emergency shutdowns. This is a disaster waiting to happen. What happens now? I asked. We need to inspect the actual well site and the storage tank, Jennifer said. Where are those located? I think the well is in the common area behind the community clubhouse. The storage tank might be there too, but I'm not sure. Who has access to that area? The HOA board, I assume. Brenda Thompson is the president. Jennifer and Paul exchanged looks. We're going to need to contact them directly, Paul said. This is now an official investigation. Mr. Richardson, thank you for bringing this to our attention. You may have prevented a serious public health crisis. After they left, I felt the weight of what I'd done settle on my shoulders. There was no going back now. The state was involved, and they wouldn't let this go until the situation was resolved. I didn't have to wait long for the fallout. Around noon, I saw 3 official vehicles pull up to the community clubhouse. 2 from the state water department and 1 from the county health department. Jennifer and Paul were there, along with several other officials in reflective vests. 20 minutes later, Brenda's SUV came racing down the street and screeched into the clubhouse parking lot. I watched from my window as she got out and immediately started gesturing angrily at the officials. The conversation lasted about 10 minutes before Brenda pulled out her phone, her face bright red even from a distance. My phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I answered anyway. Kyle Richardson, you absolute piece of garbage. Brenda's voice was shrill with rage. You called the state on us. Do you have any idea what you've done? I reported an unpermitted well system that's potentially serving contaminated water to 32 families. I did what any responsible person would do. This is revenge. This is because of your stupid heated walkway. You're trying to destroy this community out of spite. The well system has been illegal for 50 years. That has nothing to do with my walkway and everything to do with the HOA's negligence. We're going to sue you for everything you have. You'll lose your house, your savings, everything. By the time we're done with you, you'll be living in a cardboard box. Sue me if you want, Brenda. But right now, you should probably be more concerned about the state inspectors who are about to shut down your illegal water system. She hung up without another word. Over the next few hours, more official vehicles arrived. I counted representatives from at least 4 different state and county agencies. The inspectors spent the entire afternoon examining the well site, the storage tank, and the distribution system. Around 5 in the evening, Jennifer Garcia knocked on my door again. She looked tired but satisfied. Mr. Richardson, I wanted to update you on what we've found. The well system is severely out of compliance with state regulations. We've identified multiple violations. No operating permit, no certified operator, no water quality testing records, inadequate wellhead protection, and deficient distribution infrastructure. We're issuing an immediate cease and desist order. The well will be shut down tomorrow morning. What about the water supply for the neighborhood? We've already contacted Aurora Municipal Water. They're going to expedite connections for all 32 homes affected by the well shutdown. In the meantime, we're arranging for bottled water deliveries and portable water tanks. It's going to be disruptive, but everyone will have access to safe water. What happens to the HOA? That's being determined. The HOA board could face fines of up to $25,000 per day for each day they've operated the unpermitted system. Given that it's been running for decades, we're looking at potentially millions of dollars in penalties. There may also be criminal charges if we find evidence of knowing violations or if anyone got sick from contaminated water. After Jennifer left, I sat on my couch and tried to process everything. I'd gone from fighting about a heated walkway to potentially destroying the HOA financially. It felt surreal. The next morning, I woke to the sound of heavy machinery. Looking out my window, I saw crews from the water department setting up equipment near the clubhouse. A large tanker truck was parked on the street, and workers were running temporary water lines to several homes. My doorbell rang. It was Tom Morrison, the guy with the work truck that Brenda had complained about months ago. "Kyle, I just wanted to shake your hand," he said, grinning. "What you did exposing that well situation that took guts. Brenda's been terrorizing this neighborhood for 2 years. Someone needed to stand up to her. I just reported a safety issue. Maybe, but you also just saved us all from drinking potentially contaminated water. The state inspectors found coliform bacteria in the well samples. Not enough to make people sick right away, but enough that long-term exposure could have caused serious health problems." After Tom left, more neighbors stopped by throughout the day. Most were supportive, thanking me for exposing the well issue. A few were angry about the water disruption and blamed me for the inconvenience. Mrs. Patterson brought me a casserole and a fierce hug. "You did the right thing," she said firmly. "Brenda needed to be stopped, and if this is what it took, then so be it." That afternoon, I received an email from Derek with a subject line that made me smile. HOA backing down. The email contained a letter from the HOA's attorney. In formal legal language, it stated that the HOA was withdrawing all violations, fines, and legal actions against me regarding the heated walkway. They acknowledged that my system was installed safely and provided a community benefit during severe weather. They were granting retroactive approval for the system and waiving all fines. "They're in full damage control mode," Derek wrote in his email. "With the state investigation ongoing, the last thing they want is a lawsuit from you claiming harassment and retaliation. They're hoping you'll just go away quietly." But I wasn't interested in going away quietly. I'd done some research of my own and discovered that the HOA had been systematically misusing community funds for years. The annual budget showed line items for well maintenance and water quality testing, but no such services had been performed. Thousands of dollars that should have gone to proper well management had disappeared into undefined expenses and management fees. I compiled all my findings into a detailed report and sent it to every homeowner in Meadowbrook Estates. I wanted people to know exactly what their HOA board had been doing with their money. The response was immediate and explosive. Within hours, dozens of homeowners were calling for a special meeting to address the issues. Colorado HOA law required the board to hold such a meeting if requested by at least 10% of homeowners, and we hit that threshold in less than 3 hours. The special meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday evening at the community clubhouse. The blizzard had finally passed, leaving the neighborhood buried under 2 feet of snow. My heated walkway was the talk of the community, the only clear path in the entire development. Tuesday evening came, and the clubhouse was packed. Every chair was filled, and people lined the walls. Brenda sat at the front table with Patricia and Gary, all 3 of them looking like they were facing a firing squad. A homeowner named Michael Brennan, who lived on Oak Street, stood up to moderate the meeting. He was a retired attorney and had volunteered to keep things orderly. "Let's start with the most pressing issue," Michael said. "The illegal well system. Brenda, can you explain how the board allowed this situation to develop?" Brenda cleared her throat nervously. "The well system was in place long before any of us joined the board. We were assured by previous boards that everything was properly permitted and legal. But you never verified that." Michael pressed. "We trusted the documentation we inherited. What documentation? Because the state inspectors found no permits, no testing records, no maintenance logs. Where are these documents you're referring to? Brenda couldn't answer. She just sat there, her face growing redder by the second. Another homeowner, a woman named Lisa Chen, stood up. I want to talk about the budget. I've reviewed Mr. Richardson's report, and I have serious questions about where our HOA fees have been going. Can you explain the $20,000 annually budgeted for well maintenance when no maintenance was actually performed? Patricia, the treasurer, fumbled with some papers. Those funds were used for general infrastructure maintenance. What infrastructure? Be specific. Various projects around the community. That's not an answer. I'm asking for specific line items, specific projects, specific vendors. Where did $20,000 a year go? The meeting continued for 3 hours, with homeowner after homeowner demanding answers that the board couldn't provide. It became clear that the HOA had been grossly mismanaged for years, possibly involving fraud and embezzlement. Finally, Michael called for a vote. I move that we immediately remove the current HOA board for cause, based on their mismanagement of community funds and their operation of an illegal water system that endangered resident health and safety. The vote was overwhelming. Only 3 people voted against the motion, likely friends or relatives of the board members. Brenda, Patricia, and Gary were officially removed from the board. I further move that we turn over all HOA financial records to a forensic accountant for a complete audit, and that we refer any evidence of fraud or embezzlement to the district attorney's office for criminal investigation. That vote passed unanimously. Brenda stood up, her face twisted with anger. You're all going to regret this. You have no idea what you're doing. This community will fall apart without proper leadership. Madam, you need to leave, Michael said calmly. You're no longer on the board and you're disrupting this meeting. Brenda grabbed her things and stormed out, followed by Patricia and Gary. The meeting continued for another hour, with the homeowners electing a temporary board to manage affairs until a proper election could be held in 60 days. I was asked to join the temporary board, but I declined. I'd never wanted to be involved in HOA politics. I just wanted to be left alone to maintain my property safely. Over the following weeks, the situation continued to develop. The forensic accountant discovered that approximately $80,000 in HOA funds had been misappropriated over a 3-year period. Most of it had gone to a management company owned by Brenda's cousin, a company that provided essentially no services beyond sending out violation notices. The district attorney